but the election is less than 3 weeks away, so we've got to touch on what's relevant, what's pertinent, and what's really, really touching on the pulse of the people right now, and that's politics. So we're going to get started with the race for the White House as the presidential election is now less, again, than 3 weeks away. Forgive me for being redundant. By the way, congratulations to both candidates, because a record number of early votes were cast in the state of Georgia since yesterday. I think the number was at 328,000, according to reports. In 2020, it was 136,000. So a whole bunch of people mailed in their ballots. Keep this in mind, however, according to the statistics, most people who show up to the polls vote Republican. Most people who send in the mail-in ballots vote Democrat. Just want to point that out there. Former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are now focused on hitting several key battleground states. Donald Trump has spent time in Pennsylvania and Georgia this week. Meanwhile, Vice President Harris sat down for a town hall discussion in Michigan with Charlemagne the God himself of the Breakfast Club. Harris touched on a number of topics as she tries to become the nation's first black female president. So the campaign has sharpened its pitch toward black voters. However, recent polling suggests Donald Trump has made slight inroads with the black community, specifically black men. Here's a clip from the interview with Vice President Harris and Charlemagne the God addressing her campaign and her outreach for black votes.
There was a couple of things that you said that people would say were talking points, but it's really just your story, even though they are becoming your greatest hits. When you talk about the middle class and your godmother being a small business owner. Mm-hmm. But that's just your story.
It's my story. Mm-hmm. Look, I've been in this race 70 days. Some people are just getting to know me. Yep. Other people have known me. Mm-hmm. And I owe it. Listen, I feel very strongly I need to earn every vote, which is why I'm here having this candid conversation with you and your listeners. Mm-hmm. I have to earn people's support, and I am working to do that.
Before we go to another talkback call, I want to say there was a time, I had a politician tell me once that if you're running for a national election, it's bad electoral strategy to say you are going to do things specifically for black people, which is why a lot of politicians don't speak directly to their plans for black people. Is that a thing?
I don't know that that's true. I think that what is true is that I am running to be president for everybody. Mm-hmm. But I am clear-eyed about the history and the disparities that exist for specific communities, and I'm not going to shy away from that. It doesn't mean that my policies aren't going to benefit everybody, because they are.
First things first, it was really, really good to see the vice president sitting down with Charlemagne the God. Props to her for doing the interview. Props to him for getting the interview. He wasn't able to come on today to talk about that discussion with her, but he promised me that he'd be on in a few days, and I'm looking forward to that conversation, number one. Number two, I'm really proud that she did it, just like I'm happy she's doing an interview at the time of this taping with Fox News. I'm happy that she's already sat down with Roland Martin. And if you go to Roland Martin Unfiltered, you'll see her interview with him as well. I think she needs to talk to as many people as possible, and I'm going to tell you why. She needs to do so because when you are running for the presidency of the United States of America, you want to give the impression that you ain't running from a damn thing. That's the impression that you want to give. Now, certainly certain things are applicable to her that may not necessarily be applicable to Donald Trump. People might say, Stephen A., why don't you get on Donald Trump for avoiding interviews and stuff like that? Well, ladies and gentlemen, he's already been the president of the United States one time. And by the way, he won the Republican nomination by not showing up for a single debate. He was in court being indicted on numerous charges, ultimately ended up being convicted of 34 felony counts after being impeached twice. And still, the folks on the right said, we don't give a damn about DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Governor Christie, or anybody else. We want him. So it makes perfect sense why he would avoid doing anything, because guess what? He's already been in a line of fire. I'm not excusing it. Do I think it's a kind of a punk move on his part? Yeah, but that's only after he showed up for the debate against Kamala Harris and she gave it to him. That's why I would think it's a punk move on his part. But prior to that, I'm thinking from a strategic perspective, I don't blame him one bit for avoiding interviews, because all anybody's going to ask him about, very little about his policies and more so about his perceived lawlessness or literal lawlessness, depending on who you're listening to. If your folks on the left, he's a criminal. If your folks on the right, it's a witch hunt. They're just trying to influence the election. I'm tired of all of that back and forth. We know what we're getting from him. A lot of people shouldn't want it. A whole bunch of people do want it. That's the situation where he's concerned the election will show the results. When he lost to Joe Biden, he got 74+ million votes, damn it. People didn't care. The man, again, has been impeached twice. He's been convicted of multiple felonies. He's a convicted felon, and they don't care. So why am I going to waste time talking about that? Her is where the focus needs to lie. And let me be very, very clear. As a black man, I want to see this woman stand up and show that she's ready. I believe she's ready. Former prosecutor, former state attorney general in California, former senator, present-day vice president. You damn right you qualified. Act like it. And she's doing that now. Because the strategy, I'm not blaming her, but the strategy on the left from the Democrats seemed to be avoid everything. And to me, that was going to lose her the election definitively. Now it's a tight race. It's nip and tuck. It's going back and forth. I like that. I thought she was on the verge of losing with the strategy that they were employing prior to her doing these interviews. What is my evidence for this, dare you ask? Let me help you out here. Biden was the president of the United States. Was there a primary? Did I miss something? I'm asking you to just say hallelujah, yes, no, or whatever you want to my staff out here in studio. Did I miss something? Was there a primary? There was no primary when it came to Biden. We didn't see him going up against other candidates on the left because the Democratic Party had manipulated the proceedings in such a way to ensure that he would be the Democratic nominee for president. And if it wasn't for a debate on June 27th, where his cognitive decline wasn't so flagrantly evident, he would have marched into Chicago as the Democratic nominee when they knew damn well it wasn't going to fly. But ultimately, the debate exposed it. So when the debate exposed it, and then nearly a month later, he decides to back out for the good of the country, Kamala Harris is inserted in as the Democratic nominee. What was the problem with that, ladies and gentlemen? Just like he didn't have a primary and he didn't have to face any competition, neither did she. Which harkened people back to what transpired in 2020 when she was a presidential candidate and she couldn't get to Iowa because she didn't have the support. They used that and they coupled that with her approval ratings and said, yo, this ain't gonna work. So I'm looking at it from the standpoint, if you don't get out there and show people who you are, you're going to lose this election. Did you see Trump weeks ago? The war in Ukraine, with Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Hamas, then Israel and Hezbollah, or crime in the streets of New York City, or LA, or Chicago, or St. Louis, or wherever. What was Trump saying? Do you see what's going on? I'm showing up. Where is she? He was implying she wasn't tough enough. He showed up to the NABJ, the National Association for Black Journalists Conference. She didn't. Now, in fairness to her, she had a funeral to attend. But he wasn't going to mention that. He was just going to point out, I'm here, she's not. And was anything substantive coming from that? No. Reporter asked him a question. You're very rude, very nasty question. You didn't even say hello. How are you? Remember that? He got you all caught up in all of this other stuff, but she wasn't anywhere to be found. So if you're trying to win this election, you got to show up. And you got to make sure you answer questions. Maybe you don't have to answer questions as to whether or not you flip-flop with fracking. Maybe you don't have to really get into your repositioning on the border issues. But do you have to discuss crime in the streets of America? Yes. Do you have to discuss the paucity of opportunity given to black people, black businesses? You damn right you do. Do you have to discuss what your economic plan is? Yes, you do. You have to discuss these things. And you have to discuss it in a way where folks are looking at you and saying you are addressing the concerns of the black community. Ladies and gentlemen, she wasn't doing that. Is conspicuously enough as she should until now. And maybe it was all planned. Wait until the election draws near. It's only a few weeks away. Now's the time to do it. Not a month ago, not 6 weeks ago. Okay. All I was saying was it needed to be done. And now if you look at the screen right here with the issues that she was addressing when she was talking to Charlamagne the God, I'm down for that. It was in USA Today where they talked about the issues that were addressed. And what were some of the key points? Legalization of marijuana. Let me address that for a second, please. Reparations was another issue or whatever. Let me say this. Somebody got to say something, I'm going to say it. This Stephen A. y'all listening to, baby. I'm still going to say, stay off the weed. I'm still going to say it. I'm still going to say it. I don't want to see people puffing and passing. I don't want to see people high. Now you home chilling with your boys or with your girls or with the family or at the barbecue or at the barbershop or something like that, I'm down. If I'm paying my hard-earned money to see you play football or basketball, I don't want to see you high. If you flying a damn plane, I don't want to see you high. If you're a conductor on a plane, I don't want to see you high. On a train, I don't want to see you high. You Mr. Car Service, I don't want to see you high. Anything that could potentially endanger lives, I want your faculties fully aligned. Now, in fairness to her, she talked about wanting to address the legalization of marijuana because she doesn't believe people should be incarcerated for nonviolent crimes or things of that ilk. I think it was important for her to address that because her reputation as a prosecutor in California and ultimately the state attorney general was facilitating throwing black men in jail. She's saying, no, that was factually incorrect. I'm down for it. You addressed it. That's all I care about. Reparations. Ladies and gentlemen, America has given reparations to folks before. We facilitated folks receiving reparations before from different communities other than the black community. I'm not about to belabor that point, but I will say this. I'm about what's plausible, what's reasonably going to happen. That's just me. Before I go any further, play the clip, please.
Question to you is, what's your stance on reparations? We all know that America became great, off the backs of free black labor. How progressive are you on making it a priority and righting America's wrongs? It's understood that you are running for president for all people of America. Asking for specifics for black communities doesn't mean don't do for others, but black Americans are heavily asked to vote Democrat in every election for over half a century, with very little in return. What are your plans to address these very important issues and change that narrative?
Yes, I am running to be a president for all Americans. That being said, I do have clear eyes about the disparities that exist and the context in which they exist, meaning history, to your point. So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position.
You see, this is where you lose me. The issue of reparations has to be studied. Well, how much damn studying do you need to do? She said this when she was a senator. She is right that her consistency is there. It is an issue that needs to be studied. How much studying? If indeed you're serious about reparations being accorded to the African American community, particularly descendants of slaves, well, how much is that? Who gets it? We don't know the answer to that question. Well, you know what we do know? We damn sure have had enough time to figure that out. How come it ain't been figured out yet? Because it's lip service to my brothers and sisters in the black community, it ain't happening. Once upon a time, we made up more than 14% of the population. We've dipped to about 13%. We're no longer even the dominant minority in this country. Do you really, really think that billions upon billions of dollars are going to be taken from taxpayers and accorded to folks in the black community in the United States of America? You really think they're going to do that? Well, why haven't they done it already? They ain't had the money. Well, how you get the money for Ukraine? How do you get the money to address immigrants in this country who cross the borders illegally? How is it that billions of dollars have been spent addressing some of the pestilence and some of the other troubles that exist because of folks that are here in the country illegally? Somehow, some way, we came up with the money for that. But black people have been poor for a while. Black people have been homeless for a while. Black people have suffered in terms of the minimum number, in terms of your unemployment rate, and how it's always more in our community than it is in other communities. Loans from banks, business opportunities, etc. We're always at the low end of the stick. We're always at the bottom of the food chain. And somehow, some way, they're going to come up with the money now. Now that our debt has reached the trillions. Really? Really? Wake up. It ain't going to happen. I don't even know why we bothered asking her that question. It ain't her fault. Let's understand, if Kamala Harris is going to win this election, we got to be focused on what her strong points are and what his weak points are. And I think she went a long way towards addressing that by simply taking on the challenge of finally doing what I asked. Everything you say out of your mouth is not going to be easy for folks to stomach, particularly your adversaries. You ain't going to get every vote, and that's okay. But in the end, what you want to do, if you are Vice President Kamala Harris, if you are the Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States that is Ms. Kamala Harris, here's what you want to do. You want to say, on my worst day, I'm better than him. Because whatever it is that I do, I'll be open-minded and adjustable, capable of modifying my position for the best interest of this country, even if it means walking across the aisle to do it. Whereas he is not about anybody but himself. If it ain't Trump, it don't matter. That is how you win the presidency. Do you want to win or don't you? She's gone a long way towards showing us what it's going to take to win by simply doing these interviews. How effective it is remains to be seen. But at least she ain't running, meaning running away. And that's half the battle. And that's all I got to say.